Welcome, good folk, and thank you for tuning in for another tale from the Blue Wizard. This YouTube novel is for entertainment purposes, so do not make life decisions based on what you hear. Fiction is often the best vessel to carry truths of the human experience, but take only what resonates and leave the rest for someone else or another time. Today's episode is Chapter 5, Sailing East. I must begin today's chapter with a spoiler warning for those watching the Amazon Prime Rings of Power series. Our friend the storyteller said he has been enjoying the story of Gandalf's arrival in Middle-earth as portrayed, but suggested that if Gandalf did arrive in Middle-earth as a shooting star, it is because he kept delaying the journey there until Manwë finally booted him across the Great Sea into Middle-earth. But our friend's story is different in addition to being similar. The difficulty of coming up with a name to use out in the field is something both characters share. But even more difficult is negotiating life or telling a story without a name. So we shall call our informant friend Marshall, and for significant reasons, spell his name M-A-R-S-H''E-L. According to Marshall, the five Astari were incarnated as old men to mitigate the several distractions that incarnation as young men would heighten and thus focus them all the more firmly on their missions. All of the delegation of five to the field selected were white men to better blend in with the coastal cultures where most of the action would be taking place, except for Manny. Manny took upon beginning the mission the form of an old Asian man to better blend in among the eastern kingdoms that would be his focus. Our friend Marshall, having been a free spirit, recalls being initially unimpressed with incarnation. Like all matter as compared with energy, his body felt heavy, dense, thick, although his form was slender enough by most conventional standards. Marshall said he nevertheless kept bumping into doorways and stumbling on stones and roots as he made preparations for his journey. After a week of walking around naked, having not yet been equipped for the journey east, Marshall noticed his skin was turning pink and was painful to the touch. Manny noticed his discomfort, feigned concern, then grinned and said, "It's just a sunburn. Let's get you a robe," and gave him a friendly slap on the back. Marshall remembers being horrified at the sudden increase in heat and frantically tried to look over his shoulders to see if he had burst into flames. Laughing only a moment before walking him to a nearby fountain, Manny splashed water on Marshall's back, bringing soothing relief. Marshall was surprised and relieved to see in the waving reflection of the fountain's pool his skin was not charred. Manny had been in the field before, but not incarnate in this way, so he is very methodical about becoming familiar with his physical form. The first step had been sitting completely still in the thick grass, legs crossed, hands resting on knees, exploring his body's connection with his mind. He remained in this state for a very long time, almost 50 days, before opening his eyes and saying, "I'm hungry. Let's go ask the people of the stars for some food." The voyage across the endless sea was not particularly memorable, according to Marshall, and he was disappointed to be unable to write down much about his observations of open ocean wave interactions, as taking his eyes off the horizon for too long would bring what the sailors called seasickness. Manny, however, was able to practice, even on the rolling ship deck, patterned movements that resembled dance in their precision and rhythm, but with his limbs making coordinated, swift striking and fending motions. He suggested Marshall pass the time and prepare for the dangerous field situations by joining him in this practice. The idea sounded good enough, so he agreed to try, but when he missed blocking an incoming knee and was struck in the muscles of his thigh, the excruciating pain rendered him unable to stand for several minutes. It would be a very long time before Marshall looked into this discipline again. Mr. White, leader of the expedition, was also on board, as was a star child of royal lineage named Erudil. Marshall indicated that name could come up again. The plan for the other two members of the team, Mr. Brown and Mr. Gray, was for them to enter the field at a later date, having not as far to travel. Group leader Mr. White would also be operating in the western regions, but would first be joining Mr. Blue and Mr. Blue into the east to assess firsthand what kind of challenges the delegation could expect from that direction before scouting the Southlands. During the journey across the sea, the Star Child was friendly and talkative, but their leader not so much. While he can't recall any topic of importance he covered with the Star Child, Marshall remembers the conversations did pass the time pleasantly. The only other memory Marshall said he hasn't blocked out completely from the voyage here is of all the fish he ate, enough to last him a dozen lifetimes, he said. But he was delighted to find when they finally found the coast after the long ocean crossing that seafood harvested by the sailors near the shoreline, such as lobsters and crabs, wasn't fishy at all. Thank you for visiting for another tale from the Blue Wizard. I'm grateful for all the people watching so far and hope to delight you with the unfolding story. Please like, share, and subscribe.